Perfect. So yes, we are going to be recording today. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. So as I said, my name's Danielle Horning, so I actually work for Thrively. So we're going to be talking about this today. So to start us off, I like to do a little check-in. So if you guys can look at the image on the screen and think about where you're at today, which character represents you. If you want to put it in the chat, we can do that. Maybe what person and then kind of a why. I know there's a lot of options. I'll say I definitely was the person with the fingers pointing in all the directions this weekend. I just began wedding planning and it's been like chaos. So if any of you have experienced that, my heart goes out to you. But yeah, if you want to just put um, what you think in the chat, which one you are. The one juggling. It's it's so tough, I think, when you have personal life and with your job too. Oh, and twin grandbabies. Oh my gosh. Well, that's exciting. The life preserver. Yep. Oh, that's awesome with student teacher. So it sounds like everyone's been a little stressed out. So, oops, sorry. The reason I like to do this to start off is one, I was a sixth grade teacher previously for the last 4 years. And so I think it's so important that we're getting insight into all of our students, right? We need to know a baseline, and that's exactly what I like to do in sessions, different PD sessions, just because I think it's important that we know where each other are at because someone could be extremely stressed or someone could be not ready to relearn, learn, whatever it may be. So I like just seeing where everyone's at. Just as a reminder, so we are recording all the sessions, so they're going to be available to you guys in the ProGrow course catalog. Just if you guys don't mind keeping your microphone muted, just to minimize background noise. And then if you have any follow-up questions, you're going to use the link in the chat to access our Google form for submitting questions or comments, and that'll be at the end. You'll get access to that as well. Okay. But thank you for being here today. So yes, it's our professional growth day. So this right here is a link to all the resources that I've made available to you all. Again, that'll be kind of at the end of the session as well, but you're more than welcome to look at that. So our session today is going to be going from 10 to 10:40 today. So at any point, if you have questions or comments, you feel free to use the chat. Um, It's going to be available to you and you'll have access to it. And at the end, we'll have kind of a Google form that you guys can also add questions. And those are things that I can get back to you, I would say, within 24 hours. Okay, so let's get going. Why Thrively exists, right? So we're founded on a core philosophy that every child has a genius and they deserve to thrive. Really, we're trying to get away from deficit-based mindsets, right? We really want to bring a paradigm shift into education. We want students to walk in and feel valued. And I think that's what I saw most in sixth grade was students walking into class and they already were defeated, right? So I taught social studies and science in sixth grade. And with that, I think a lot of my students already felt, oh, I'm not good at science. I'm not good at social studies. So they already walked in feeling very defeated, which we don't want them to feel like that. We want them to feel like they have the strengths in order to do anything they need. Okay. So, our essential goal today, right, is to focus on how we can leverage data to design and implement high quality instruction that addresses the diverse learning needs of every student. Okay. That is our goal, right? Is looking at data and how can we actually utilize this. So, how this ties to Thrively, right? What we've done is built in three core things to develop the whole child, right? So build self-identity in every learner, instill hope, and support well-being. So these three different things offer essential data to all educators. So whether you're a counselor, teacher in the classroom, TOSA, whatever it may be, this is awesome, awesome data that you're receiving through each of these things. So I'm going to start off with, looking at self-identity. So we have a strength assessment. You may have already heard about this. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes for all students, but it's really looking at 5 top strengths for them, right? So in 23 strengths, and an assessment, we're able to look at them, we're able to break down top 5 strengths for them. And what we've noticed is this increases engagement by 30%, right? That's huge because what we're seeing is that students don't necessarily feel like their school understands them, knows them. And that's where we come in as the educator, right? The teacher of the classroom. We come in, we make them feel known, we make them feel important and valued. Okay, so this is what a strengths assessment will look like. So as you can see, this is one of our students. They get this beautiful strengths profile, okay, and their top 5 strengths. So really providing them the language behind their strengths, because I can't tell you how many of my students, right, sixth graders, are looking at me going, Miss Horning, I have no idea what an analytical person is, right? So this really breaks down the language for them. And these are great confidence boosters. And I used these actually during parent-teacher conferences, IEP meetings, report card comments. These were great. But really having these in all my meetings with parents was a huge plus. And for some of my students, I had parents crying because this is the first positive they've had in years, right? So looking at the data we receive as educators, right? If I'm looking at my class snapshot, right? My entire class, let's say this is a new class, right? We just started the year and I had them take the strengths assessment for the first time. I'm able to look across and get an idea of each student. Okay, their strengths, interests, aspirations, and then their profile description. So, wizard of words. But these really help us to, one, get to know our students, especially if you have a student you've never met before, right? This gives us kind of how can we connect with them? How can we kind of bring them into content, right? Maybe you have a class where you have a lot of students that they're interested in music. I know for one of my classes, I brought in, you know, um, different songs that involved the content because I knew they loved music. That's a way that you can really bring in and adjust to how you're teaching, how you're connecting with students based on this information. And what I've seen a lot of schools use this for aspirations because this is something they fill out right in the beginning. A lot of schools are using their aspirations, what they want to be, to help them figure out career day and who's coming in, right? So again, coming back to the data, coming back to how are we actually utilizing this besides giving students a confidence boost, right? And that's really what they need is a confidence boost, especially in middle school, high school. You have so many students that are down on themselves. And unfortunately, I think talking to previous colleagues, we're seeing it at lower grade levels a lot too, where they're really starting to be very conscious of their peers and, how they look and how people are thinking and viewing them. So this is really to support our students, but great, great insight for us as educators, right? Because we can also make connections for our students of, okay, so I noticed that both of you, let's say you have a new student, both of you are really into music. What kind of music? Start a conversation with them. You're able to bring in a new student and already have background information on them that would take weeks to get into. Okay. So that's our first step is the strengths assessment. Okay. And I'm going to go into the platform really quick. So hopefully you guys have access to Thrively. If any of you don't, if you want to put your email in the chat and I can double check, make an account for you if you don't already. Okay. But so when students take the strengths assessment, they'll actually take it right here. It'll just say strengths assessment. Thank you. Um, and then when I have my students, I can go to my classes, right? Oop, sorry, it's logged me out. So when you go to my classes, this should show any class you have access to. So let's say you are a counselor or someone that supports different grade levels. I'll have access to all those different classes. Okay. And when my students have taken the strengths assessment, I can easily print them all, right? Again, this is in my classes. And I'll have a video for how to print these out again too for you guys in the resources. But then I just go to these three dots and print the strength certificate. What's great about this is you can print them in English or in Spanish. So huge. I had a high population of Spanish speakers in Fallbrook. Oh yeah, you did it as a teacher, right? So admin has access to if the staff have taken their strengths assessment too. And it's great insight for them. So I'll show you what this looks like, a strength certificate. This is the full certificate. Here's that profile, right? Really going into the details, the language behind this. And I usually had my students read this to their parent because it was kind of further affirmation for them when their parents would laugh and be like, oh my gosh, that is you, right? It's just another opportunity for your student to feel valued. And yes, I do have strengths. And it's so needed. And then families can actually sign up as well. Go. And for admin, if you're looking at this, you can actually go into manage faculty. You can print your staff's strength certificates as well. So I actually like to do this at different PDs. We actually will do a poster with all the strengths, and then teachers will actually put stickers next to the strengths they have. So really representing how they are strong on campus, right? And that's where I usually start out with the strengths is I'll pull up my strength certificate as a teacher and read it to them and say, okay, so this is how I'm strong, right? These are some of my strengths. They're not all my strengths, right? There's just some of them. But now I want to see what's strong in this class, what's strong with all of you, right? So just breaking down for them and really going into let's focus on our positives that we have, right? Because too often it's a deficit-based learning, right? Where we don't have that growth mindset. Even as adults, sometimes we tend to focus on the negatives, but it's just an opportunity for students to feel supported and valued. Okay. Oops, sorry. The next one I want to go into is instilling hope. Okay. So this is a quick survey. It's 2 minutes. We do this every quarter. So only 4 times a year would your students do this. This is research-based, right? We break this down into agency and pathway. So really we're looking at the drive to complete your goal and the path to get there, right? So if students don't have that drive, they're really not going to reach their goal. And if they don't have an idea of their path and how to get there, they're not hopeful. That's what we're finding. So hope actually mediates all anxiety in the brain. It helps with all cognitive learning functions, and it is a primary predictor of academic success. So really, we've taken a lot of time, and there's been tons of research that has come out to back up hope, right? And the importance of it. So we're looking at and having students take these survey because we want to know how hopeful they are. So if I'm looking at my class, I can break this down into how hopeful my students are. So we generally want our students to be at a score of 20 or higher. That's going to be kind of moderate to high hope, but that's where we want them to be, right? That's their hope score. So this is where it's broken down. They have a Likert scale that they'll do to break down their hope score. But we're looking at, are these students hopeful, right? At the beginning of the year, halfway through, we want to look at these time periods to see how our students are growing because we're noticing that hope is contagious, right? So with that, we're really looking at, I want to take this information and go, okay, let's look at my seating chart. If I have two low hope students right next to each other, it's not going to go well, right? So I can use this data to really adjust my seating chart and to focus on specific things that I'm going, okay, my class really needs to start looking at the positives or just simple joys, maybe even practicing mindfulness at a certain point in the day, right? And that's where we have different playlists, like the Pure Edge, that really focus in on hope, right? So our goal is that students are really growing in their hope score throughout the year, right? And this is again something that administrators can do with their staff. I know I've taken this before, and I mean, I'll tell you, one of my hardest years, I was a very low, moderate hope, right? But it gets us really thinking about, okay, like, why am I not hopeful? Right? It brings that into conversation, our mental health, our focus of what's going on in my life that I'm really not feeling hopeful. And I think that was a surprise for me as an educator when I did have a kind of moderate low hope and, who I was around. And that's really where you see, different things coming into play, who you're surrounding yourself with, and are you thinking about, different challenges in a way that am I able to look at something and say, no, I'm going to figure it out. I got this. Or am I looking at a challenge and going, I'm already defeated, right? And that's where we want to start this with our students because it's starting this conversation. And I think having these conversations with our student, it really brings in to affect we care about you and re-emphasizing you're important. Okay, so on our Thrively dashboard, if you scroll across and go to hope, right? So the last score that was taken was a medium hope. So as you can see, I have 1 out of 61 students have completed this. When students complete this, if they're a low hope, so let's say I had 2 students that took it today and they were both very low hope. Immediately, this is going to notify me that, okay, you have students that are low hope, they need attention, right? So really giving you insight as a teacher to, okay, we need to have a conversation. This needs to come up, right? And it allows you to really track this over the year too, where you can look back and say, hey, you started out really hopeful in the beginning of the year, and this next quarter, your score is a lot lower. What's going on? But really emphasizing to students we care, right? And that's what the biggest thing is we want to for them to know we care. But as a counselor, administrator, let's say you have conferences that come up or a meeting with a parent to discuss a student, having this data, right? Having this data on our students over time is going to be huge, right? They've had low scores all year. What's going on at home? Like, we need to talk about this. Their behaviors have changed. What's going on? So it's really helping, the data is really helping us start the conversations, adjust instruction, right? If we want to incorporate playlists, but on top of that, tracking our students over time and even tracking our staff if we want to do that as an administrator. Okay. And the slideshow, so these are linked in here as well for you guys. So this is probably my favorite one. I actually use this in my sixth grade classroom a lot. This is my biggest reason for falling in love with Thrively. So we want to support their well-being. Okay. So this is a 90-second check-in. It's really focusing on how they're feeling and functioning. So the well-being check-in, we usually recommend that students take it, I would say once a week. I got to a point in my sixth grade class, it was such a positive for my students to have access to. I was doing it almost every day. Okay, so this is something I used as a warm up, right? I'd have my students would walk in and I'd have two questions, science or social studies on the board, and then their well-being check-in. So it kind of gave you a little wiggle room for early finishers, right? Or if you need a little time for attendance, this isn't something you could do. But we're really looking at how they're feeling and functioning. Okay. So I'm going to go into the platform first and show you guys. So well-being check-in. So this is what it'll look like for your students. They'll have a check-in button just like us, but they'll also have a heart that they can go to. When they check in, so this can be in English or Spanish, they'll press start and then go into the different questions. How am I feeling about my health? I've been in a good mood. I've been getting along well with others. I've been engaged in my daily activities. I've been waking up feeling rested and feeling hopeful about the future. This next part, this is not something you have to do. Students can have an opportunity to reflect if you enable it, or they can just have those questions that we just did on the Likert scale. I turned this on for well, I guess my school turned it on. And so my students started reflecting. And I will say it gave me so much insight about my students. I had a student last year, happiest kid, always positive. Everybody loved him, and it was a normal day. On the well-being check-in, his score was one really low. So again, that pops up if any students are, if they come up as low, just like hope, it'll come up as students needing attention. But on top of that, he ended up doing the reflection and he wrote that his dad had gotten arrested the night before and he watched it happen. I would have never known that at all unless he had written it down. And I think what these well-being check-ins, even if you just did the questions, they give our students a voice. And a lot of them don't feel like they have that. And in this world where so many students are becoming very tech savvy and, they're almost more comfortable for some of them communicating online or through text message, it kind of meets them where they're at and says a reminder of we care. And that's what I always told my students is it's whatever you want it to be. If you want to tell me about your entire weekend, tell me. If you want to just say I'm good, that's fine. but it gives them a voice and it allows you to track it over time. So that's where it's super important, because if you have a student that checks in and they actually check in low for 7 days straight, it immediately emails you as a teacher, emails the counselor, emails the principal, whoever's on that list, right? This student is really struggling. So it's again notifying you that you need to reach out to the student. This student really needs support. So it's looking at this data, right? If this is my entire class, to give students a voice, but also to start a conversation. Okay. So, and again, you can track this information over time. Again, this is great for bringing into parent-teacher conferences, counseling meetings. I've definitely brought it up. I've noticed even in a parent-teacher conference, I've said, hey, I notice you're not getting any sleep. And when I asked you about it, you said you've been playing video games all night. Like, what's going on? And that's where the parent is going, oh, I need to be checking in on them and making sure they're actually going to sleep, different things like that. But I think starting the conversation is huge for our students. And, with my sixth graders, it got to a point of I had 3 6th grade classes rotating with me, and it got to a point of them asking me most days, Miss Horning, did you check my well-being? They realized I was looking at it. They realized I really cared. And that was our conversation. That was the building of our relationship. And when our students know we're looking at this information, they're realizing we're tracking this. They feel more cared about it. I mean, it really helped my classroom management and my engagement with my students. And I became a safe place for so many of my students because they felt like I can come to you. So I cannot recommend the well-being enough. It is a huge difference in classroom engagement and management. I did want to go into real quick. We have other assessments that students can take. I have resources on these as well that will be at the end. So all these different assessments. So we talked about the strengths assessment, the hope index, and the well-being index. We also have 3 other assessments. So 5th through 12th grade can take the RIASEC. The RIASEC is focusing on personality traits and future career paths. So especially, right, as 5th grade, middle school, going all the way into high school, this is huge for them, right? So looking at, how do your personality traits connect to different careers? So I'll actually show you guys our pathways. So this is an area that students can explore and gives them different careers. So different RIASEC. So if, let's say we're going to focus on realistic as a personality trait for our students. I can go to realistic personality careers, and it goes into all these different careers students can explore. So I liked this a lot in my classroom because I taught science, I taught the body systems. So we could look at, we're going to talk about a career connected to this. So we'll go into an anesthesiologist, right? This is where we can open up the door for research projects, right? I mean, this has so much extensive information for our students. It's insane. I always love these. And I had some of my students, early finishers. I said, okay, I'm going to have you build a slideshow focusing on 2 different careers you really liked. It goes into so much information. And then it also has, right, if you want to differentiate, maybe you have a student that just hates reading, you also have videos that talk about this career as well. And it's something, as a teacher, if we're going to say, we're going to spend a few minutes just learning about this career in connection with the content, it's perfect. And if we're going to class insights again, so this is where your data lives, right? This is where your data lives. If I'm going to class snapshot, this gives me the strengths assessment, right? How many students have completed. This is kind of that visual I gave you. I can also look at any of these other assessments. So you can see some of my students haven't completed this for the RIASEC, the interest profiler. Some of them have. Artistic, investigative, social. This is where you can start making those connections for your students, especially middle school. I think is a great time to do this. And then just going back to the other assessments, you also have the habits of mind. So this is K through 12. These are habits essential for successful adults, right? We want our students to be successful, but these are going into like communication skills, different things like that. So give you guys a visual. So these are skills that habits that they're doing in really well. And over time, students can actually track how they're doing in these areas. And that's where we want to do it, from the lower grades all the way up. So they can really track their development. And for high school students, this is great information because they can actually talk about in an interview, I have all these habits that I've been working on, and this is how I've grown in these areas, right? So really looking at, their top habits, right? Persisting. That's huge. For an interview, if I can say I'm super persistent, I've developed this trait over the years, right? Wasn't always easy, but I've been really working on challenging myself through problems, working through them and problem solving on my own. There's so many different ways they can go into these habits. This other one is multiple intelligences. I personally really like this assessment. It's fourth grade through 12th grade. So this is looking on how they learn and view the world. So I like this because I was big on study skills, and looking at maybe you're a musical person, right? Maybe that's your top multiple intelligence is music. So for that person, what's the best way to study? Find a song on YouTube about the water cycle, right? Or sing your vocabulary words. Or if you are a kinesthetic learner, right? You need to be moving, right? Maybe you're doing flashcards with someone while throwing a ball back and forth. There's so many ways to view this information. And I think, especially for someone study or focusing on study skills, this is a huge key for kids because if they know how they study best, even in middle school, they're going to be so much better prepared for high school and college. I mean, it's just going to open up a whole new world for them because they know how they learn. Okay. So these assessments give us so much data on our students, right? So self-smart, people smart. So knowing emotions, being able to read people, that's huge for sales. That's huge for, professional developments and working with other people, right? Picture smart. Maybe you're someone that needs to look at visuals a lot to really understand, or even someone that needs to create an image to better understand their studying. There's so many ways that teachers can really use this information to support our students and differentiate, give them options that we can go, okay, let's say you are music smart. These are some options you can do for studying. Let's say you're people smart, okay? Looking at different people, watching different people talk about this. How are we going to incorporate how they learn best? And yeah, that does end up kind of taking more time for us as educators, but even giving them that option of knowing how they learn best, going back to interviews and resumes, that's huge. So this is how I learned best. I've learned that over a period of time. I've learned that I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to be doing something. I need to be interacting. that's wonderful that you know that, right? Because they already know, okay, so they know how they're going to access this content. That's going to be great. So I want to give you guys a little bit of time. I know we kind of finished early. So this is the Google form for any questions. Let me copy that link address for you guys and put it in the chat to everyone. For any questions you have, I know I kind of went through a lot, but I will say that, looking at data and how we're going to use that, this platform has a lot of opportunities for us to collect data on every kid and be able to differentiate and really focus in on how do you learn best? How am I going to support you because of what's going on? How am I going to support you with your hope score? I think it gives us just additional access to insight about them and what's going on with them, which is so important. And let me know if you guys can't see the Google form questions. They should pop up. And then these are going to be some of your resources that you guys receive on the page. Okay, so some of these are different videos, right? An overview of Thrively, how to print the strengths assessment, a guide. I actually made a guide walking teachers through how to sign students in, how to actually start them with the strengths assessment, and then other videos connecting to different areas within the platform. And that's something, if you guys want further information, that Google form is huge for asking questions, comments. Maybe there's one area you're like, I wish this would be a little different. Say it. We really appreciate honesty and the feedback that from you guys, because educators are the ones really implementing this, and you guys are the key, right? You're the key to getting insight on our students. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Katie. Yeah. I mean, that's huge for looking at students specifically that might need support. Um, I mean, think of I can think of 4 students that are in 6th grade now because I knew them as 5th graders that needed this, that needed that additional support. Um, so it's awesome you guys can see that, the importance of this, because I think when COVID first happened, we had a lot of social emotional support for our students. And I think for some schools that's kind of faded a bit, but those problems really haven't gone away, right? So this allows us to really focus in on those. But thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, putting right supports in place is huge. That is huge. And that goes back to, right, if they're low hope, making sure they have lessons on hope, how to be more positive, mindfulness, right? But thank you guys so, so much for being here today. Again, if you need that Google form, I have it right here. Any additional questions, feel free to let me know if you have any questions or comments about what we've done today. Okay. Thank you for being here, though.